Marcus Chen had always been a cat person, which made his current situation both wonderful and slightly overwhelming. His small apartment on the outskirts of New Geneva Station now housed 7 cats of various sizes and colors, each one a rescue from the harsh streets of the colony world. The war had been raging for 3 years now. The Kalari Empire, a massive galactic force with technology far superior to humanity's, had been systematically conquering human colonies across the Outer Rim. New Geneva was one of the last holdouts, a mining station that had somehow managed to avoid detection in the nebula's thick gas clouds. Marcus worked as a maintenance engineer in the station's lower levels, fixing atmospheric processors and keeping the life support systems running. It was honest work, but lonely. That's why he'd started taking in the strays. The first had been a small orange tabby he'd found injured near the waste recycling center. Then came a sleek black cat with unusual golden eyes. One by one, more had followed, as if word had spread through some invisible cat network. The strangest of his collection was Luna, a magnificent silver cat with eyes that seemed to shift between deep blue and brilliant gold depending on the light. She was larger than the others, with an almost regal bearing that made the other cats defer to her. Marcus had found her 3 months ago, badly wounded and unconscious in an alley after a particularly brutal Imperial scout probe had buzzed the station. What made Luna truly unusual wasn't just her size or coloring, but her intelligence. She seemed to understand human speech perfectly, often responding to questions with specific meows or gestures. She could open doors, operate simple controls, and had even learned to use the apartment's communication console to call Marcus when he was at work. The other cats were remarkable too. Whiskers, the orange tabby, had an uncanny ability to predict mechanical failures, always showing up at Marcus's workstation just before something broke down. Shadow, the black cat, could seemingly disappear and reappear at will, moving through the station's ventilation system with impossible stealth. There was also Patches, a calico who could predict incoming ships hours before the sensors detected them, and Storm, a gray tom whose presence seemed to calm panicked colonists during emergency drills. Marcus had mentioned his unusual pets to his colleague, Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's xenobiologist. She'd laughed it off initially, suggesting that his loneliness was making him anthropomorphize normal animal behavior. But when she finally visited his apartment, her scientific skepticism quickly turned to amazement. "Marcus, these aren't ordinary cats," she'd whispered, after watching Luna carefully manipulate the apartment's environmental controls to adjust the temperature. "Their cranial capacity is at least 30% larger than normal felines, and look at these neural patterns." She'd run a medical scanner over Luna, who sat perfectly still during the examination. "This is impossible. These readings suggest cognitive abilities on par with higher primates, maybe even approaching baseline human intelligence." The revelation had come at the worst possible time. Imperial forces had finally located New Geneva, and long-range sensors were detecting a massive fleet approaching their position. The station's defenses were pitiful compared to what was coming, and evacuation was impossible with nowhere left to run. As klaxons blared throughout the station announcing the impending attack, Marcus found all 7 cats gathered in his living room, sitting in a perfect circle around Luna. Their behavior was unlike anything he'd seen before. They weren't hiding or showing fear like normal animals would during the loud alarms. Instead, they seemed to be communicating with each other through subtle movements and sounds that were almost musical. Luna stood and walked directly to Marcus, placing a paw on his hand. When he looked into her eyes, he could have sworn he saw something distinctly non-feline looking back at him. There was an ancient intelligence there, something that spoke of vast knowledge and power held in check. The station shuddered as the first Imperial probe ships entered the system. Through his apartment's small viewport, Marcus could see the massive dreadnoughts beginning to form attack formations. The human fleet was already moving to intercept, but everyone knew it was a hopeless gesture. The Empire had never lost a major engagement against human forces. Dr. Kim's voice crackled through the comm system. "Marcus, you need to get to the evacuation centers now. This is really happening. The Imperial 7th Fleet is here, and they're not here for negotiations." As Marcus moved toward the door, Luna suddenly darted in front of him, blocking his path. She looked up at him with those impossible eyes and let out a sound that was definitely not a meow. It was more like a word spoken in a language he didn't recognize but somehow understood. "Wait." Marcus froze. Cats couldn't talk. He was sure of it, but Luna was looking at him with an expression that seemed almost sad, as if she was making a difficult decision. The other cats had formed a protective circle around both Marcus and Luna now. Their usual playful demeanor was gone, replaced by something that reminded Marcus of soldiers preparing for battle. Whisker's orange fur was standing on end, but not from fear. Shadow seemed to be growing darker, as if the apartment's lighting was bending away from him. Storm's gray coat was literally crackling with tiny sparks of static electricity. Outside, the first exchange of fire lit up the space around New Geneva Station. Human plasma cannons reached out desperately toward the Imperial ships, their energy dissipating harmlessly against advanced shielding technology. Return fire from the dreadnoughts punched through the station's outer defensive platforms like they were made of paper. Luna walked to the center of the room and sat down. Her tail curled around her feet in a posture that seemed almost ceremonial. She looked directly at Marcus and spoke again, her voice carrying an unmistakably regal tone despite coming from a cat's throat. Marcus Chen of Terra, you have shown kindness to strangers without asking for reward. You have protected those who could not protect themselves. The time has come for debts to be repaid. The apartment filled with a strange warm light that seemed to emanate from Luna herself. As Marcus watched in amazement, the silver cat began to shimmer and grow, her form becoming less solid and more radiant with each passing second. "What are you?" Marcus whispered. Luna's voice, now echoing with harmonics that spoke of vast power, answered with words that would change everything Marcus thought he knew about the galaxy. "I am Queen Selenia of the Dragon Courts, and these are my royal guard. We have been waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves to humanity. That moment has arrived." The transformation was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed. Luna's silver fur began to shimmer and dissolve, revealing scales that caught the apartment's lighting like liquid starlight. Her small feline form expanded rapidly, growing from house cat size to something that filled nearly half of his living space. Wings unfurled from her back, translucent membranes that seemed to contain entire nebulae within their surface. Queen Selenia now stood before him in her true form, a magnificent dragon whose presence radiated power and ancient wisdom. Her scales shifted between silver and deep blue, and her eyes held the depth of eternity. Despite her size, she moved with fluid grace that prevented any damage to Marcus's modest apartment. The other cats were transforming as well. Whiskers became a burnished copper dragon with mechanical augmentations along his wings, his expertise with machinery now making perfect sense. Shadow transformed into a sleek black dragon whose scales seemed to absorb light itself. Patches revealed herself as a vibrant dragon with scales of multiple colors that shifted like oil on water. Storm became a gray dragon whose hide crackled with barely contained electrical energy. Each member of the royal guard was magnificent, but none compared to their queen. Selenia's presence filled the room not just physically but with an aura of command that spoke of millennia of rule. "You're dragons," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. "But why were you living as cats?" "Why here?" Selenia's voice resonated with harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The Dragon Courts have watched the rise of humanity with great interest, Marcus Chen. Your species possesses something rare in the galaxy, the ability to show genuine kindness to those you perceive as lesser beings. We disguised ourselves to test this quality." Through the viewport, explosions continued to light up space as the Imperial fleet methodically destroyed New Geneva's defenses. The human ships were fighting valiantly, but it was clear they were hopelessly outmatched. Plasma fire from the massive Imperial dreadnoughts was systematically taking apart the station's defensive platforms. "The Kalari Empire believes itself supreme," Selenia continued, her voice taking on a harder edge. "They have conquered 17 species in the past century, enslaving some, exterminating others. They view dragons as myths, humanity as primitives. They are about to learn they are wrong on both counts." Marcus felt the station shudder as Imperial bombardment began targeting the main structure. Emergency lighting flickered throughout his apartment as power systems struggled to maintain functionality. The evacuation sirens were growing more urgent. "Can you help us?" Marcus asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Can you stop them?" Selenia's massive head turned toward the viewport, watching the unfolding battle. "We can, but that is not the question you should be asking. The question is, do you trust us enough to let us reveal ourselves to your people? Once the galaxy knows that dragons exist and are allied with humanity, everything will change." One of her guard, The copper dragon who had been Whiskers spoke for the first time. His voice carried the precision of an engineer. The Empire's fleet consists of 47 capital ships, 300 escort vessels, and approximately 2 million combat personnel. By standard tactical analysis, New Geneva Station should fall within 6 hours. But standard tactical analysis doesn't account for dragons, added the black dragon who had been Shadow. His voice seemed to come from the darkness itself. Marcus looked around at the transformed beings who had been his pets just minutes ago. The weight of the decision they were asking him to make was staggering. They were offering to save his world, but at the cost of revealing a secret that would reshape galactic politics forever. Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. Through the communication system, Marcus could hear the desperate voices of the defense coordinators as they tried to organize a resistance that everyone knew was doomed. What would happen if people knew? Marcus asked. About dragons, I mean. Selenia's expression grew thoughtful. The dragon courts have remained hidden for 100,000 years. We have watched civilizations rise and fall, intervened only when necessary to prevent galactic catastrophes. If we reveal ourselves now, as humanity's allies, it will mark the beginning of a new age. Some species will seek our favor, added Storm, electricity playing across his grayscales. Others will fear us. The Kalari Empire will certainly target both dragons and humans for extermination. But humanity will no longer stand alone, Selenia said firmly. The Dragon Courts command respect throughout the galaxy. Our technology and knowledge span eons. An alliance between dragons and humans would shift the balance of power fundamentally. Marcus thought about the people throughout the station, families huddled in emergency shelters, brave pilots launching in fighters they knew couldn't win, engineers like himself trying to keep critical systems running as the world fell apart around them. He thought about Dr. Kim, probably in the medical bay treating wounded from the first wave of attacks. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Do it, he said. Save them. Save everyone. Selenia nodded, a gesture both regal and somehow tender. You have made the choice that will echo through history, Marcus Chen. Your willingness to trust will be remembered. She turned to her guard. Initiate Revelation Protocol. Full tactical deployment. Show the Empire what it means to attack those under dragon protection. The apartment filled with light as the dragons prepared to teleport. But before they left, Selenia looked back at Marcus one more time. You will come with us, she said, as our liaison to humanity, and as the one who showed kindness when kindness was not required. Today the galaxy learns that humanity has allies it never suspected. Wait, Marcus said, suddenly overwhelmed. I'm just a maintenance engineer. I'm nobody special. Selenia's massive head lowered until she was looking directly into his eyes. You are the human who fed stray cats without asking what you would gain in return. You gave shelter to the lost, comfort to the injured, and love to those who seemed to have nothing to offer. In the Dragon Courts, Marcus Chen, there is no higher qualification for leadership. The light around them intensified, and Marcus felt the strange sensation of space folding around him. Through the viewport, he could see the Imperial fleet continuing its methodical destruction of the human defenses. They had no idea what was coming. As the teleportation completed, Marcus found himself standing on the bridge of something that defied description. Part starship, part living creature. It was clearly built by beings whose technology had evolved far beyond anything he could comprehend. Through vast crystalline windows, he could see space around New Geneva Station. And filling that space, materializing out of nowhere, was the Dragon Fleet. Hundreds of ships that seemed to be grown rather than built, their hulls shifting with organic curves and surfaces that pulsed with inner light. Each vessel was unique, clearly crafted for its individual dragon captain, and each one radiated power that made the Imperial dreadnoughts look like primitive toys. Imperial Fleet. Selenia's voice boomed across all communication frequencies, her royal authority unmistakable even through translation protocols. You have attacked those under dragon protection. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences of your aggression. The response from the Imperial fleet was immediate and predictably arrogant. Plasma fire erupted from dozens of ships targeting the dragon vessels with everything they had. The dragon's response was swift and devastating. The Imperial plasma barrage struck the dragon ships with enough firepower to vaporize small moons. The energy beams hit the organic hulls and simply disappeared, absorbed into the living metal like water into sand. The dragon vessels didn't even slow down. Marcus watched in amazement as the dragon fleet moved with a coordination that spoke of shared consciousness. They didn't communicate through radio or quantum channels like human ships. Instead, they flowed together like a school of fish, each captain instinctively knowing where the others would be. "Impressive," commented the copper dragon who had been Whiskers, now serving as Selenia's tactical coordinator. "The Empire's weapons are more advanced than their last encounter with our kind. Still primitive, but showing development." "When was your last encounter with them?" Marcus asked, trying to process everything he was witnessing. "Approximately 3,000 years ago," Selenia replied casually. "They attempted to expand into the Andromeda spiral. We convinced them otherwise." The dragon ships began their counterattack, and Marcus understood why the Empire had been convinced. Beams of pure energy erupted from the dragon vessels, but these weren't simple plasma weapons. The energy moved like living things, snaking between Imperial ships with impossible precision, finding weak points in armor and shielding that shouldn't have existed. One beam struck an Imperial dreadnought amidships. Instead of exploding, the massive warship simply began to come apart at the molecular level, its hull dissolving into component atoms that scattered like glittering dust. "Nano disintegration array," explained Storm matter-of-factly. "We don't destroy ships. We convince their atomic bonds to release." The Imperial fleet's formation began to break apart as captains realized their weapons were useless and their ships were being systematically deconstructed. But the Kalari were nothing if not stubborn. Instead of retreating, they redirected their fire toward New Geneva Station itself. If they couldn't defeat the dragons, they would at least complete their original mission and destroy the human colony. Massive plasma bolts streaked toward the station's civilian sectors, enough firepower to kill millions of people in seconds. Marcus felt his heart stop as he watched death approaching the innocent families he'd been trying to protect. The bolts never reached their target, Patches. The Calico, who was now a prismatic dragon, had positioned herself between the Imperial fire and the station. Her multicolored scales suddenly blazed with light, and an energy barrier materialized around the entire colony. The plasma strikes hit the barrier and were somehow transformed. Their destructive energy converted into harmless light that scattered like aurora across the nebula. "Energy conversion shields," she said, her voice carrying notes like crystal chimes. "Quite useful for protecting primitive infrastructure." Marcus realized what she'd called the station and felt a moment of offense, then remembered he was talking to beings whose technology was millions of years ahead of humanity's. From their perspective, human engineering probably looked like stone tools. "The Empire is attempting to retreat," reported Shadow, his sensors somehow tracking ships even through their advanced stealth systems. 17 vessels have already entered hyperspace. "Should we pursue?" Selenia considered this, her ancient eyes watching the fleeing Imperial ships. "No, let them carry word back to their leadership. The galaxy needs to know that dragons have returned, and that humanity is under our protection." As the last Imperial ships vanished into hyperspace, an eerie quiet settled over the battlefield. The space around New Geneva Station was littered with the molecular dust that had once been some of the Empire's most powerful warships. Human vessels, battered but intact, slowly approached the dragon fleet. Marcus could only imagine what the human crews were thinking. Minutes ago, they had been facing certain death. Now they were looking at ships that defied their understanding of physics, crewed by beings they had thought were mythical. "Open a channel to the station," Selenia commanded. "It's time for proper introductions." The main viewer flickered, showing the emergency command center of New Geneva Station. Marcus recognized Admiral Sarah Vance, the station commander, looking stunned as she tried to process what she was seeing. Behind her, Marcus could see Dr. Kim equally amazed. "This is Admiral Vance of New Geneva Station," came the transmission. "To the ships that assisted us, we are grateful for your intervention, but we need to understand what just happened here." Selenia moved into view of the camera, her magnificent form filling the screen. "I am Queen Selenia of the Dragon Courts, Admiral Vance. Your engineer Marcus Chen provided aid to members of my court when we were in need." "We do not forget such kindness." Admiral Vance's expression shifted through several stages of shock. Marcus Chen? Our maintenance engineer?" "The same," Selenia confirmed. "He has agreed to serve as liaison between our peoples. I believe you humans would call it an ambassadorial position." Marcus stepped into camera range, still trying to process his sudden promotion from wrench turner to interstellar diplomat. "Hi, Admiral. Sorry I didn't mention the cats were actually dragons. I only found out myself about 10 minutes ago." Dr. Kim pushed forward to the camera. "This is impossible. Dragons are mythological. They can't exist." Storm, the electrical dragon, chose that moment to demonstrate his abilities. Lightning arced between his claws as he spoke. "Your mythologies remember us, Dr. Kim, because we have visited your world before. Many of your legends are based on actual encounters with our people. But why now?" Admiral Vance asked. "Why reveal yourselves during this attack?" Selenia's expression grew serious. "Because the Kalari Empire has become a threat that spans galaxies. They have already enslaved or exterminated 17 species. Left unchecked, they will continue, expanding until they encounter civilizations that cannot be allowed to fall." "You mean there are other species out there that," Marcus began. "That would make the Empire's previous conquests seem benign by comparison," Selenia finished. "Yes, the galaxy is far more complex and dangerous than humanity realizes. The Empire's expansion must be stopped before they trigger conflicts that could destroy entire star systems." The implications were staggering. Marcus had always known humanity was a young species in galactic terms, but he'd never imagined they were essentially toddlers playing in a cosmic playground filled with forces beyond their comprehension. "What do you propose?" Admiral Vance asked. "An alliance," Selenia replied. "The Dragon Courts will provide technology, knowledge, and military support. In exchange, humanity provides something we have not seen in millennia, which is the ability to care for others without calculating advantage, the willingness to help strangers in need, the kind of moral courage that led Marcus Chen to rescue injured cats from the streets, not knowing they were actually disguised royalty." Marcus felt embarrassed by the praise, but Selenia continued. "These qualities are rarer in the galaxy than you might think. Most species develop survival instincts that override compassion as they advance technologically. Humanity has somehow retained both intelligence and empathy. This makes you valuable allies and, more importantly, trustworthy ones." Admiral Vance was quiet for a long moment, clearly trying to process the magnitude of what was being offered. Finally, she spoke. "This decision is far beyond my authority. I'll need to contact Earth Command, the Colonial Council, probably half a dozen other governmental bodies." "Of course," Selenia agreed. "But while your leaders debate, the Empire will be regrouping. They will return with larger fleets and different tactics. Time is not unlimited." "How much time do we have?" Marcus asked. Shadow, who had been monitoring deep space communications, answered. "Imperial long-range transmissions indicate they're recalling fleets from 3 sectors. Given their typical mobilization speed, we estimate 4 to 6 weeks before they return with overwhelming force." "Then we use that time wisely," Selenia decided. "Marcus, you will accompany a delegation to Earth. Your people need to understand what we're offering and what it will cost them." "Cost them?" Admiral Vance asked sharply. Selenia's expression grew somber. "Alliance with the Dragon Courts means entering a larger conflict that has been building for millennia. Humanity will gain incredible allies and access to technologies beyond your current imagination, but you will also inherit enemies you never knew existed. The choice must be made with full understanding of both benefits and risks." Marcus looked around at the dragons who had been his beloved pets just hours ago. Whiskers was analyzing the station's damaged systems with sensors that hadn't existed moments before. Shadow was tracking Imperial ship movements across multiple star systems simultaneously. Patches was maintaining defensive shields around an entire space colony. Storm was somehow monitoring communication channels across half the galaxy. They had been hiding their true nature, but they had never stopped protecting the people around them. Even as house cats, they had been using their abilities to help. "What do you think?" Admiral Vance asked Marcus. "You know them better than anyone." Marcus thought about finding Luna injured in an alley, nursing her back to health while she watched him with those impossibly intelligent eyes. He remembered the way all the cats had worked together to keep the apartment systems running during power outages. He thought about their loyalty, their obvious care for each other and for him. "I think, Mara, the journey to Earth aboard Queen Selenia's flagship was unlike anything Marcus could have imagined. The ship itself was a living entity, its corridors shifting and adapting to the needs of its passengers. What appeared to be walls would become transparent when Marcus wanted to see outside, or would display information when he needed to understand something about dragon technology. "It's not actually reading your mind," explained Whiskers during one of their conversations. The copper dragon had been assigned as Marcus's technical guide, helping him understand the basics of dragon science before they reached Earth. The ship responds to bioelectric fields and subconscious body language. It learns your preferences and anticipates your needs. They were traveling through something the dragons called fold space, a method of transportation that bent reality rather than simply moving through it. Outside the transparent sections of the ship, Marcus could see layers of space-time peeling away like onion skins, revealing the underlying structure of the universe itself. "How fast are we going?" Marcus asked. "Speed is not the correct concept," Storm replied, his gray scales flickering with electrical patterns. "We are not moving through space. We are convincing space to be smaller." The philosophical implications made Marcus's head hurt, but the practical result was that they would reach Earth in less than a day, a journey that would have taken human ships several weeks even with the fastest hyperspace drives. During the voyage, Selenia had been patient in explaining the broader galactic situation. The Dragon Courts were not the only ancient power, merely one of several that had reached technological and cultural maturity millions of years ago. Most of these elder species had withdrawn from active galactic politics, content to pursue knowledge and art in hidden realms. "The problem," Selenia explained as they shared a meal in her private quarters, "is that withdrawal creates a vacuum. Younger species like the Kalari Empire fill that space, and their ambitions often exceed their wisdom." Marcus was still adjusting to dining with a 30-foot dragon. The ship had provided food suitable for humans, though he suspected it was created from raw energy, rather than grown or prepared in any traditional sense. "So why not just stop them directly? You obviously have the power." "Power without justice is tyranny," Selenia replied, her ancient eyes reflecting depths of experience Marcus couldn't fathom. "If we simply imposed our will on every aggressive species, we would become the very thing we seek to prevent. Better to find allies who share our values and support them." "And you think humanity shares your values?" "Marcus Chen, you spent 3 months nursing an injured dragon back to health, believing she was simply a stray cat. You asked for nothing in return. When other strays arrived, you cared for them too, despite having limited resources. This behavior is not unique to you among humans, but it is vanishingly rare among species that have achieved interstellar travel." She gestured with one massive claw toward a display showing galactic star charts. "Most civilizations develop along predictable paths. They master their environment, expand beyond their homeworld, encounter other species, and then either conquer or are conquered. The strong survive, the weak perish, resources are divided among the victors. But humans are different. Humans consistently demonstrate what other species consider evolutionary disadvantages. You form emotional bonds with other species. You risk your own safety for strangers. You spend resources helping those who cannot help you in return. By most galactic standards, these traits should have led to your extinction long ago." Marcus considered this while watching the space-time layers shift outside the ship. "Maybe we're just too stupid to know better." "Perhaps," Selenia agreed with what might have been amusement. "Or perhaps you understand something that older species have forgotten. That survival isn't just about individual advantage, but about building something larger than yourself." Their conversation was interrupted by Shadow materializing from what appeared to be solid wall. His ability to phase between dimensions still unnerved Marcus, but he was getting used to the impossible being routine around dragons. "Earth Command has responded to our communication," Shadow reported. "They're assembling a full council session. Representatives from all major human governments plus colonial authorities and military commands." "Their response to our initial message?" Selenia asked. "Mixed. Curiosity, skepticism, fear, and..." Shadow paused, consulting internal data streams. "Approximately 47% believe we are an elaborate hoax created by the Kalari Empire." Marcus laughed despite himself. "That's actually pretty good for first contact with mythological beings. I was expecting at least 60% hoax theories." "There's more," Shadow continued. "Intelligence services have confirmed our identity by analyzing the New Geneva Station battle footage. The technology we displayed doesn't match anything in known Imperial arsenals. They've concluded we're either genuine dragons or representatives of an unknown alien species with comparable capabilities. Either way, we're not human," Marcus noted. "How are they handling that?" "About as well as expected. Some governments are calling for immediate military mobilization. Others want to establish diplomatic protocols. The Colonial Council is demanding guarantees about territorial sovereignty, and the Terra First movement is claiming this proves their theories about alien infiltration. Selenia's expression grew thoughtful. Predictable responses. Fear and suspicion are natural when encountering the unknown. The key is showing them that alliance benefits humanity without diminishing human autonomy. What can you offer them? Marcus asked. Besides military protection, I mean. Whiskers answered by projecting holographic displays around the dining area. The images showed medical technologies that could eliminate genetic diseases, energy systems that would make scarcity obsolete, transportation methods that would connect human colonies across vast distances instantaneously. Our knowledge spans millions of years of development, Whiskers explained. We can offer solutions to problems humanity hasn't even recognized yet. But technology alone isn't the true gift. What is? Marcus asked. Perspective, Selenia replied. Humans are currently focused on survival and expansion, which is appropriate for a young species. But you're approaching the threshold where those instincts become limitations rather than advantages. We can help you navigate that transition. The ship began to slow as they approached the Sol system. Marcus felt a strange sensation in his stomach as fold space collapsed back into normal reality. Through the transparent hull, he could see the familiar constellations of his home system. Earth looked exactly as he remembered it, a blue jewel hanging in the void, but he was seeing it now through dragon eyes, recognizing it as just one world among billions, populated by one species among thousands. The perspective was both humbling and strangely comforting. Impressive orbital infrastructure, Patches observed, her prismatic scales reflecting the light from Earth's space stations, more advanced than most species achieve at this stage of development. Earth Command is hailing us, Storm reported. They're requesting we maintain position at the outer system boundary while they prepare for formal contact. Reasonable caution, Selenia agreed. Open a channel. The communication screen displayed a human woman in military uniform, her expression carefully controlled despite the obvious magnitude of what she was experiencing. This is Admiral Chen Li of Earth Command. You are requesting permission to approach Earth for diplomatic contact. Marcus felt a moment of surprise at the surname, then realized it was probably coincidence. Chen was a common name. I am Queen Selenia of the Dragon Courts, came the formal response. We carry Marcus Chen of New Geneva Station, who has agreed to serve as liaison between our species. We seek audience with your leadership to discuss matters of mutual concern. Admiral Chen's composure wavered slightly at the mention of Marcus's name. Marcus Chen, are you related to Engineer Marcus Chen of the Colonial Survey? Marcus stepped into camera view. That would be my father, Admiral. Aunt Lee? The formal diplomatic atmosphere evaporated as Admiral Chen's professional mask cracked into a grin. Marcus, your father told me you were working on some outer rim station. He didn't mention you were making friends with dragons. To be fair, Marcus replied, I thought they were cats until yesterday. Selenia watched this exchange with what Marcus was learning to recognize as draconic amusement. I believe this qualifies as what humans call a small world. Admiral Chen, Marcus said, suddenly feeling the weight of his new responsibilities. We need to talk. All of humanity needs to understand what's happening. The Empire isn't going to stop with New Geneva, and what we're facing is bigger than just one aggressive species. Admiral Chen's expression sobered. I know. We've been analyzing the battle footage and the Imperial communication intercepts. Come home, Marcus. Earth Command is ready to listen. As their ship moved toward Earth, Marcus realized that everything was about to change. Humanity was about to learn they weren't alone in ways they'd never imagined. The question was whether they would be wise enough to accept the help they were being offered, and strong enough to handle the responsibilities that came with it. The meeting was held in the Grand Assembly Hall of Luna Station, humanity's most prestigious diplomatic facility orbiting the moon. Representatives from every major human government sat around a massive, circular table designed to promote equality among Earth's various nations and colonial territories. Marcus had never felt so out of place in his life. He sat between Admiral Chen Li and Dr. Sarah Kim, who had insisted on being part of the diplomatic team after her initial encounter with the disguised dragons. Across the table, various ministers, generals, and colonial governors whispered among themselves as they waited for the dragons to arrive. I still can't believe this is happening, Dr. Kim muttered. 6 months ago, I was studying bacterial samples from asteroid mining operations. Now I'm about to participate in humanity's first formal diplomatic contact with dragons. You examined them first, Marcus pointed out. That makes you our leading expert on dragon physiology. I examined house cats with unusual brain patterns, she corrected. There's a significant difference in scope. The whispered conversations around the table fell silent as the main doors opened. Selenia entered first, her regal bearing commanding immediate attention despite having to duck slightly to fit through the human-sized entrance. Her royal guard followed, each dragon unique in their coloration and capabilities but all radiating the same ancient authority. The transformation of the room's atmosphere was immediate. These weren't just alien beings or advanced technological entities. They were something primal that spoke to deep human memories. Legends and myths suddenly made flesh and scale. Distinguished representatives of humanity, Selenia began, her voice carrying easily across the vast chamber. We come seeking alliance against a threat that endangers both our species. Chancellor Williams of the European Federation was the first to find his voice. Your Majesty, before we discuss threats, we need to understand your intentions toward humanity. Your technological superiority is obvious. What guarantees do we have that this alliance won't become subjugation? Selenia nodded approvingly at the question. A valid concern, Chancellor. We could have revealed ourselves at any point in human history. We could have guided your development, claimed your worlds, or prevented your expansion into space. We did none of these things because conquest contradicts our fundamental values. But you did intervene, pointed out General Morrison of the Colonial Defense Corps. Your people were present on human worlds, observing us in disguise. Some might call that espionage. This time it was Whiskers who responded, his copper scales gleaming under the chamber's lights. General, would you call it espionage when your veterinarians examine wild animals to monitor their health? We observe to understand, not to exploit. The difference is crucial. Marcus winced at the comparison but saw several delegates nodding thoughtfully. From an ancient species perspective, humanity probably did look like wildlife requiring observation and care. What changed? Asked Minister Zhao of the Asian Colonial Confederation. Why reveal yourselves now instead of continuing your observation? Storm, the electrical dragon, projected holographic displays throughout the chamber. The images showed star maps with indicators tracking Imperial fleet movements, conquered systems marked in red, and projected expansion patterns that painted a grim picture. The Kalari Empire has accelerated beyond normal parameters, Storm explained. Their current expansion rate will bring them into contact with several elder species within 50 years. Species that will not respond to Imperial aggression with restraint. Meaning? Asked Chancellor Williams. Shadow materialized from what appeared to be empty air beside the projections, his ability to phase between dimensions causing several delegates to jump. Meaning the Empire's next encounters will likely trigger conflicts that sterilize entire star systems. Some elder species consider removal of threats to be more efficient than rehabilitation. The implication sent a chill through the assembly. Marcus realized the dragons weren't just offering protection from the Empire. They were trying to prevent humanity from being caught in the crossfire of a much larger conflict. What exactly are you proposing? Admiral Chen asked. Selenia gestured, and new holographic displays appeared showing technological schematics, star charts, and what appeared to be educational curricula. Full alliance between our species. We provide technological advancement, strategic knowledge, and military support. In exchange, humanity provides something equally valuable. Which is? Prompted Dr. Kim. Moral grounding, Selenia replied simply. Ancient species tend toward detachment. When you possess the power to reshape star systems, individual lives can seem insignificant. Humanity reminds us why those individual lives matter. Marcus understood what she meant, remembering their conversations during the journey to Earth. The dragons needed humanity not for resources or strategic advantage, but to maintain their connection to compassion and empathy. Specifically, what would this alliance entail? Asked Representative Singh of the Indian Space Territories. Whiskers began outlining the technical aspects. Medical technology capable of eliminating genetic diseases and extending healthy lifespans. Energy systems that make resource scarcity obsolete. Transportation networks connecting all human colonies instantaneously. Manufacturing capabilities that can construct habitats in previously uninhabitable environments. The room filled with excited murmurs as delegates realized the scope of what was being offered. Marcus could see the hunger in their eyes, the recognition that these technologies would revolutionize human civilization. "What about weapons?" General Morrison asked bluntly. "The Empire will return with larger fleets." Patches, the prismatic dragon, addressed this concern. "Defense technologies, yes. Weapons designed to protect rather than conquer. Energy shields, nano-disintegration arrays for stopping incoming attacks, and fold space capabilities for evacuation if necessary." "But no offensive capabilities?" the general pressed. "General," Selenia said firmly, "we will provide everything necessary to defend human territory and populations. We will not provide technologies designed primarily for aggression. That distinction is fundamental to our values." Chancellor Williams leaned forward. "What guarantees do we have that you won't withdraw this support if we displease you? Or change the terms of alliance?" "The same guarantee you offer us," Selenia replied. "None beyond our demonstrated character and mutual interest in survival. Trust must be earned through actions, not promised through words." Marcus appreciated her honesty but could see it wasn't what the politicians wanted to hear. They were looking for contracts and clauses, legal frameworks that could contain cosmic forces. Dr. Kim spoke up unexpectedly. "I've been studying the biological scans I took of Luna, of Queen Selenia, when I thought she was a cat. Her cellular structure shows damage patterns consistent with extending aid to injured beings repeatedly over a very long period. She's literally worn down from healing others." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't a species seeking advantage or dominance. These were beings who had been helping others for so long it had left physical marks on their bodies. "How long have you been doing this?" Marcus asked softly. "Helping other species, I mean." "Since we achieved the wisdom to understand that survival means more than simple existence," Selenia replied. "Approximately 1 million years by your measurement of time." The scope of that commitment staggered the assembly. 1 million years of choosing to help rather than conquer, despite possessing overwhelming technological superiority. "What happens if we refuse?" asked Minister Zhao. Shadow answered grimly. "The Empire returns in 4 weeks with overwhelming force. Human colonies fall one by one. Within a year, humanity either submits to imperial rule or faces extinction. Either outcome eventually triggers the larger conflict we're trying to prevent. And if we accept, humanity becomes a major galactic power overnight," Selenia replied. "But you also inherit enemies and responsibilities you're not prepared for. There will be species that resent your sudden advancement, others that will test your resolve, and ancient powers that will evaluate whether humanity deserves the partnership we're offering." Admiral Chen stood up, her uniform crisp despite the magnitude of the moment. "I need to ask the question everyone is thinking. Why should we trust dragons when every human myth about your kind involves hoarding treasure and burning villages?" Selenia's laugh was like music made of wind and starlight. "Admiral, your myths also claim we kidnap princesses and demand virgin sacrifices. Yet Marcus Chen lived with 7 of us for months and was never once asked to provide either." The tension in the room broke as laughter rippled through the assembly. Marcus felt a moment of pride at how effectively Selenia had diffused the suspicion while making her point. "The myths remember encounters between early humans and dragons," Whiskers added. "But they remember them from the perspective of primitive societies meeting advanced technology. To Bronze Age humans, any sufficiently advanced capability would seem like magic, and any being possessing such capabilities would seem godlike. The question," Selenia continued, "is not whether you can trust legends about dragons. The question is whether you trust the character demonstrated by the dragons sitting before you. We chose to reveal ourselves to save your species. We offer partnership, not dominion. The choice of how to respond, The vote was closer than Marcus had expected. 47 delegates voted in favor of the alliance, 32 opposed, and 6 abstained. The opposition came primarily from traditionalist factions who believed humanity should face the imperial threat alone, regardless of the consequences. "We didn't evolve to the top of the food chain by accepting help from predators," declared Senator Rodriguez of the Mars Colonial Authority during the final debate. "Dragons or not, we don't know their true motivations. This could be an elaborate manipulation." But the deciding factor had been Dr. Kim's presentation of her medical analysis. The cellular damage she'd discovered in Selenia's disguised form told a story of millennia spent healing others, often at personal cost. Combined with the testimony of survivors from New Geneva Station, it painted a picture of beings whose actions consistently matched their stated values. The formal alliance was signed in a ceremony that would be remembered throughout human history. Selenia pressed a massive claw to a crystal tablet that recorded her bioelectric signature alongside the digital signatures of Earth's leaders. The crystal would serve as both legal document and communications device, creating a permanent link between the dragon courts and human governments. Within hours of the signing, dragon ships began arriving throughout human space, not warships, but vessels loaded with the most advanced medical and engineering technologies humanity had ever seen. The dragons hadn't waited for formal approval to begin helping. They'd been preparing aid packages since the moment Selenia decided to reveal herself. Marcus found himself appointed as the first human ambassador to the dragon courts, a position that came with responsibilities he was still trying to understand. His first official duty was accompanying a dragon medical team to Kepler Station, where a plague outbreak threatened 30,000 colonists. The medical dragons worked with an efficiency that bordered on miraculous. Instead of treating symptoms, they addressed the plague at its genetic level, rewriting the viral code to render it harmless. The entire outbreak was contained and cured within 18 hours. "How is this possible?" asked Dr. Martinez, Kepler Station's chief medical officer, as she watched dragon healers work. "We don't fight diseases," explained Emerald, a green dragon whose scales seemed to contain living light. "We convince them to become helpful instead of harmful. Every virus wants to reproduce successfully. We simply change their definition of success." The philosophical implications were staggering. Dragon medicine didn't destroy pathogens. It transformed them into beneficial organisms. Marcus was beginning to understand that dragon technology wasn't just more advanced than humanity's. It operated on fundamentally different principles. Meanwhile, dragon engineers were revolutionizing human infrastructure. On Titan Base, copper-scaled dragons like Whiskers installed energy collectors that drew power directly from quantum fluctuations in space-time. The base went from energy rationing to unlimited power overnight. But the most impressive changes were happening on Earth itself. Dragon agricultural specialists introduced growing techniques that could produce food in previously impossible environments. Deserts began blooming with crops that thrived in sand and salt. Ocean platforms sprouted forests that grew faster than anything in nature. "They're not just giving us advanced technology," Admiral Chen observed during one of their regular briefings. "They're teaching us to think differently about problems." Marcus nodded, watching through the window as a dragon ship gracefully maneuvered through Earth's orbital traffic. "Selenia told me that most species develop by conquering their environment. Dragons learn to cooperate with it instead. The integration wasn't without challenges. Some human populations were deeply uncomfortable with their new allies. Protests erupted in several major cities, with demonstrators demanding that the alien occupiers leave Earth. The Terra First movement gained membership as fears spread about humanity losing its independence. More concerning were the reports from intelligence about other galactic powers taking notice of the alliance. Several species had already sent scout ships to observe human colonies, apparently curious about the species that had gained dragon protection. "We're being evaluated," Shadow reported during a security briefing at Luna Station. "At least 6 different civilizations are studying human behavior, technology, and social structures. Some are friendly observers, others are potential threats." "What kind of threats?" Marcus asked. "Species that view rapid technological advancement as destabilizing to galactic order, others that consider dragon protection to be favoritism requiring correction, and a few that simply want to test humanity's worthiness of alliance with such powerful beings." The first test came sooner than expected. A massive fleet appeared at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, where humanity's newest colony was still under construction. The ships belonged to the hegemony of Zephyria, an ancient species known for their rigid adherence to what they called proper development protocols. "Humanity has advanced beyond natural parameters," announced the Zephyrian fleet commander in a message, broadcast across all human communication networks. "This disrupts galactic stability. The anomalous development must be corrected." Marcus felt his blood run cold. The Zephyrian fleet consisted of over 200 ships, each one larger than anything in the human navy. Without dragon protection, humanity would be helpless against such a force. Selenia's response was swift and decisive. Dragon ships materialized throughout the Proxima system, not in aggressive formations but in clear defensive positions around the human colony. Hegemony of Zephyria. Selenia's voice carried across space with unmistakable authority. Humanity is under the protection of the Dragon Courts. Any action against human colonies will be considered an act of war against our people. The standoff lasted for 3 tense days. Marcus spent most of that time aboard Selenia's flagship, watching as diplomatic communications flew between the dragons and the Zephyrians. The ancient species was clearly trying to find a face-saving way to withdraw without appearing to back down. "They're not actually interested in fighting us," Whiskers explained as he monitored the Zephyrian fleet movements. "They're establishing their position for other observers. Several species are watching this confrontation to see how dragons respond to challenges." "Politics," Marcus muttered. "Even at the galactic level, it's still about appearing strong." The resolution came when Selenia offered something the Zephyrians hadn't expected: a formal debate about humanity's worthiness for Dragon Alliance. The ancient protocols of galactic civilization allowed for such challenges, and the Zephyrians couldn't refuse without losing credibility. The debate was held in neutral space, aboard a massive station that served as a meeting ground for elder species. Marcus was chosen to represent humanity, a responsibility that terrified him until he realized what Selenia was actually doing. She wasn't asking him to prove humanity deserved dragon protection. She was asking him to show the galaxy who humans really were. The debate chamber was filled with beings from across the galaxy, species Marcus had never imagined. Some were energy-based entities that communicated through controlled electromagnetic fields. Others were crystalline structures that spoke in harmonics. A few appeared to be living machines, their thoughts processed by quantum computers integrated into their bodies. "Present your argument for human worthiness," demanded the Zephyrian representative, a being that resembled a cross between an octopus and a tree. Marcus stood before the assembled representatives of galactic civilization and did something that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of arguing about human achievements or potential, he told them a story about finding injured cats in an alley. He described Luna's injuries, the patient weeks of nursing her back to health, and the joy of watching her recover. He talked about the other strays that followed, each one different but all needing care. He explained how he'd never questioned whether helping them was worthwhile, never calculated the benefits he might receive in return. "That's what humans do," Marcus concluded. "We help because helping is right, not because it's profitable. We care for others because their welfare matters, not because they can reward us. Dragon Alliance isn't about what humanity deserves. It's about what we choose to do with the opportunities we're given." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then one of the energy beings spoke, its words transmitted through electromagnetic pulses that the translation system converted to audible speech. "The human demonstrates emotional reasoning over logical calculation. This suggests psychological immaturity rather than moral sophistication." But another voice, this one from a crystalline entity, rang with harmonic tones. "Or it suggests retention of qualities that older species have forgotten. When did we last act from compassion rather than calculation?" The debate that followed revealed something Marcus hadn't expected. The galaxy wasn't divided between good and evil civilizations. It was divided between species that had retained their capacity for growth and those that had become locked into rigid patterns of behavior. When the final vote was tallied, humanity's right to Dragon Alliance was upheld by a narrow margin. But Marcus realized the real victory wasn't the vote itself. It was the conversation the vote had started among the galaxy's elder species. As they